Hello, good afternoon, everyone.
Afternoon.
Dear authors and invited guests, welcome to the technical session 10A. Myself, Aarti Mohan, and this session would be moderated by me. On behalf of Global Knowledge Research Foundation and GR Scholastic LLP, it is my great pleasure to welcome you all to the International Congress on Information and Communication Technology, ICICT 2025, London, UK. The 10th edition of the conference is being organized in a hybrid mode. The physical event was held on 18th in London, and the virtual event is being held through Zoom from 19th to 21st February 2025. I hope you all would be enjoying this interactive and knowledgeable sessions through the day. In this session, we have 6 presentations. Each presenter would be given 12 minutes for the presentation and 3 minutes for the question and answer session round. On 10 minutes, I'll raise a gentle reminder. There's another request to all the participants that you all stay connected with us till the closing remarks. If you have any sort of query or any update, you can write it to me in the chat box. Just before we get started with our session, I would like to introduce you all to the chairs for this session. We have Professor Wusumsi from South Africa, and he is actually currently a lecturer in University of Fort Hare, South Africa. It's my pleasure to welcome you, sir, on board with us.
Thank you so much. Happy to be here, Arti.
Thank you. We have another session chair, Dr. Geeta. She's a professor and She's currently working as a professor and head of department of computer engineering in Singhgad Institute of Technology and Science, Pune, Maharashtra. She has teaching experience of 25 years and has 30 plus international journal publications. She has also been a part of 20 plus international and national conference and has 3 patents. It's my pleasure to welcome you, ma'am.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Before we get started with our session, I would request our respected session chairs to share a few remarks with all the participants in the session. I would request our respected session chairs to share opening remarks with all our participants before we get started with our session.
Okay. Thank you so much, Arti. Ladies and gentlemen, just relax and do what you had planned to do. We wish you all the best for your presentations. You may calm down and make sure that you leave us excited about your work, about your research, and about your presentation. So let's try to enjoy it and have a good time. Please stick to allocated time, yes.
Thank you. Thank you so much for your remarks, ma'am.
Yeah, thank you so much. So I also wish all the participants best luck, and I would like to give concluding remarks for this session. So let's start with the session.
Yeah, sure. Moving on to our presentations. We have the paper title, A Comprehensive Analysis of Social Franchising Model Development, Exploring Key Dimensions and Insights. Dear presenter, before we get started with the presentation, I want to give an update to the presenter. Could you please provide your updated email IDs and author names in the final submitted paper that you have submitted? You just have to edit it with the updated email ID and co-author name and write it to and mail it to us in the ID. I'll provide it after your presentation. I'll provide the email ID in the chat box. Is it working fine with you?
Yes.
Yeah, sure. Thank you.
Wait,
So please,
sorry, do I have to email the presentation to you? Or is
the paper, the
pertaining to the
paper.
article? The
Yeah,
article.
the
Okay.
final article to us through an email ID. I'll provide you the support ID after your presentation. So you can
Okay.
submit email there. Is it
Okay.
fine?
Thank you. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you. Please proceed with your presentation. Thank you.
Okay, can I start now? Everyone can hear me?
Yes, we can see your presentation. You may please start with your presentation.
Okay, good afternoon, everyone. I am Wele, and I'm a PhD candidate at the beautiful University of Stellenbosch. And I work rather closely with my supervisor, Professor Sarah Grobler. And we are in the process of developing a conceptual framework for social franchises to help them enhance their sustainability, as well as managing their hybrid nature. Today, I shall be presenting to you all just a fragment of my research, which is a comprehensive analysis of our social franchising model development. Today, we are going to be exploring the key dimensions and insights that we deduced from our scoping analysis, our scoping review. So just a brief overview of what this presentation will entail. We'll commence with our introduction, where I set the tone for the presentation. I let you know the research problem background. Then we will talk about discuss briefly the research questions, as well as the method that has been followed for the scoping analysis. Then we will look through how I screened the literature. Then we will discuss the results, and then we will conclude with our conclusion. So as we all know, the United Nations has proposed the Sustainable Development Agenda for the decade of 2020 to 2030. The aim is to decrease poverty, empower disadvantaged individuals, as well as solve the climate emergency that we face. But unfortunately, with the increase in social deprivation, as well as the political uncertainty we face today, government alone will not have the capacity to attain these societal objectives. But there's a solution. There has been a rise of an organizational form called social enterprises. This is an organization that aims to resolve social problems and create social value. So what is a social franchise? A social franchise is a social enterprise, which is a business that has a dual mission, a commercial mission as well as a social mission. It can have an environmental mission, but for the sake of my research, we focus on social enterprises that have a dual mission. A social franchise is a social enterprise that has replicated itself in different geographical regions. Now, I've mentioned social enterprising, social franchising, but what is hybrid organizing? What is hybridity? Hybrid organizing is a prevalent research field and industry practice that helps hybrid organizations such as social enterprises and social franchises with managing their hybridity. Hybridity tensions arise when the social mission, which is the for nonprofit logic, is prioritized over the commercial mission, which is the for-profit logic. So if these missions are not prioritized together, then we then lose the identity of being a social enterprise and we become a commercial enterprise. But that's not what we want. So I mentioned social franchising. Where does the micro come into play? Micro franchising is a form of social franchise, as you can see on the screen. A micro franchise is beautifully complex, integrating social franchising, commercial franchising, and the juicy bit, which is sustainable social development. And that's what we aim to work on. That's why we decided to niche to micro franchising. So the objective of micro franchises is to alleviate poverty, but specifically in the base of the pyramid markets. So the study then posed the following research questions, just to mention a few. So what are the geographical and historical trends in the social franchising research landscape, as well as what are the researchers' empirical applications concentrated? Most importantly, what are the key concepts, theories, and frameworks in the literature of social franchising regarding hybridity and its sustainability, longevity. So a scoping review is a systematic and qualitative approach to reviewing existing literature. As you can see, we have a 6-step process which we then followed to make sure that relevant articles are selected and we get the juicy bits of the data. So firstly, we looked at the review questions, which I briefly mentioned, but you saw the whole list in the previous slide. We then developed an inclusion and an exclusion criteria to make sure that relevant articles are selected. Then we looked at where can we find the relevant studies, which is discussed in the subsequent slide. We used 2 databases to search relevant studies. Then we screened our literature to make sure that we have relevant articles. Then we extracted data from them and we did a data analysis and synthesis. So as you can see on the screen, 2 databases were then used to screen literature. We used Scopus as well as ICICT. Scopus is a database that enables methodical searches, and then ICICT is an AI research tool, which you then use by, you retrieve data through searching keywords and subject headings. Initially, in the identification phase, we had 677 papers retrieved, which was very intimidating, but then we managed to be able to screen it down to 38 papers. Some papers were then excluded because of them being redundant, as well as them not being in English, or simply just failing to meet the inclusion criteria. We then use bibliometrics, which is an informative and reliable tool for science mapping and quantitative analysis to be able to put visuals to the articles. So from doing our bibliometrics analysis, we then identified that social franchising has been primarily used in the medical sector, with approximately 45% of the relevant articles reflecting that. Then secondly, it was business management. And then this is where we identified that we can definitely add value. We looked at engineering, because I am an industrial engineering PhD candidate, and there's only been a 2.4% of articles. So we saw that this is where we can definitely add some value. When we looked at our publications, most countries, which are high-income countries, are the ones that had most publications on social franchising, which I found to be very interesting because social franchises definitely are mostly needed in low-income countries, such as South Africa. That's where I am, for Simuzi. So we identified that social and micro franchising has not been extensively investigated in low-income countries, which is where we are, South Africa, which unfortunately had the lowest number of publications. So after looking at literature and we looked at the frameworks that exist, we then saw that many frameworks emphasize social impact measurement, as well as replicability and scalability. But there was definitely minimal discussion when it comes to legal and regulatory considerations, because when in South Africa, a social franchise is still identified as a non-profit organization, which definitely does create an identity crisis, because a social franchise does believe to be commercial as well as social, not just non-profit. So when we now niche it down to the key elements that we identified, as I mentioned, that the social franchise has a dual mission. As you can see, we have the commercial mission as well as the social mission. What then constitutes the commercial mission? It's choosing franchisees that adhere and believe in the social mission and not just socially driven. We're looking at the operations manual, because many of the individuals who are in these communities, which are base of the pyramids, may not necessarily be highly skilled. And this is what we need to be able to push our commercial mission. And then when we look at our social mission, which employs the nonprofit logic, this is where then we have to have local adaptation to ensure that the social franchise is socially embedded, as well as affordability. We acknowledge that an organization or business should definitely be commercially driven, but we are in the base of the pyramid markets. So this has to be an organization that considers affordability. Now, as we can see, the sweet spot is hybridity, where two missions then merge. How do we make sure that the commercial mission and the social mission narratives of social franchising has had minimal integration of both logics. And this is where then hybridity tensions manifest, because we prioritize the social mission or the commercial mission. So what is hybrid organizing? Hybrid organizing integrates the for-profit logic, commercial mission, as well as the non-profit logic, which is the social mission. And this ensures that this hybrid organization takes into consideration the 5 dimensions, which is culture, organizational design, as well as workforce composition. If these dimensions are regulated, this will ensure that the social and the commercial aspects are well integrated, not prioritizing one mission over the other. And then when it comes to sustainable business model, this is a framework that aims to make sure that social franchises or hybrid organizations are sustainable, looking at 4 dimensions. We're looking at duality management, the commercial and social mission, as well as target beneficiary, people who reside in the communities, not just to make money. So this helps contribute towards achieving social and economic value simultaneously. So after the scoping analysis, we then concluded that social franchising has definitely been clinical in nature, and there's definitely been minimal research addressing hybridity in social and micro franchising, looking at it from that lens. And we aim to identify where hybridity tensions manifest in social micro franchises, since it hasn't been elaborated on. So this is definitely going to be an interesting investigation, and then establish a framework that will aid in enhancing the hybridity and sustainability, and hopefully get more people in industry on board with creating social franchising, because it isn't just for them as well, it's also to make sure that people's livelihoods are positively impacted commercially as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much for your presentation. We are open for questions.
Thank you so much, Welekazi, for that presentation. Ngabooth. Now, your focus, well, your study highlights a focus on healthcare. Are there other sectors that you think have potential for this social franchising? According to literature, what other sectors do you think have potential for this social franchising?
There definitely have been various sectors that I've definitely investigated, just at a primary stage for now, because we just received our ethical clearance, so I was forbidden from doing it extensively. So there is a social franchise that has been operating now for 20 years, which is called Sports for All. And this basically is a social franchise that goes to different schools and helps people who are from that community and want to maybe establish a sports center. So it can definitely get into mental wellness as well, because I would consider sports being something like that. There has also been another social franchise, which is founded by an amazing individual who helps people establish libraries at disadvantaged schools. So it's definitely also can be in the education sector.
All right, thank you so much.
Welcome.
Ma'am, you have any questions?
No, we can proceed.
Okay.
Thank you.
So moving on to our next presentation, we have the paper title, A Proposal for a Multi-Factor Authentication Scheme to Prevent Wi-Fi Hacking at a University. Dear presenter, could you please start with your presentation?
Okay, let me just. Can you see my screen?
Not yet. Yeah. Yes, it's visible. You can proceed with your presentation.
Okay, let me just. Good day, everyone. My name is Kutlula Matebula. I'm doing my master's at the University of Johannesburg. The title of my presentation is a proposal for multi-factor authentication scheme to prevent Wi-Fi hacking at a university. The presentation will cover the introduction, the aims and objective, the problem background, problem statement, and understanding multiple factor authentication, why multiple factor authentication, the research methodology, and the proposed MFA scheme. And the conclusion as well. So my introduction, in today's digital age, the security of wireless network has become a concern, particularly within educational institutions where vast amount of sensitive data is stored and transmitted. Universities in particular face unique challenges due to the open access environment and the increasing sophistication of cyber threats. The reliance on single factor authentication methods, typically you're entering your username and password, leaves university networks vulnerable to various forms of attack, which could be phishing, social engineering, and brutal force. The aims and objective. This research focuses on enhancing the security of a university's Wi-Fi network by implementing multiple factor authentication scheme. MFA is increasingly recognized as a robust method for verifying user identities, as it requires multiple authentication factors, such as knowledge base, that would be your password, password pins, position base, that tokens, that would be security tokens or mobile apps. And lastly, the biometric data, which would be your fingerprints and facial recognition. There's multiple layers of security significantly reduces the risk of unauthorized access, making it far more challenging for cyber criminals to breach the network. As noted by experts, MFA is becoming an essential security measure because obtaining multiple credit is more difficult for an attackers than acquiring just one. So for my research, we came up with 4 research questions. The first one, which is, what are the security benefits on implementing multiple factor authentication in comparison to the current method used by universities? Second one, which combination of MFA protocols is most effective in securing Wi-Fi networks for a university environment? The third one, what strategies should be incorporated into the MFA scheme for the protection of the university's Wi-Fi network? And lastly, how effectively does the proposed MFA mitigate the impact of the potential threats and enhance the security of the university? So basically, each and every research question, it moves from one step to another. Once the first one is asked, then the second one makes a follow-up, and it goes. So to achieve the research aim, first, the study will assess the security improvements that the MFA could provide over current methods. It will then identify which combination of MFA protocols would most effectively secure the university's network. Based on these findings, the research will propose an MFA scheme tailored to the unique needs of a university environment. Finally, the effectiveness of the proposed MFA scheme will be evaluated in terms of its ability to mitigate security threats and enhance the overall protection of the university's Wi-Fi network. Moving on to the problem background. In this era of modern technology, wireless networks are increasingly compromised due to the lack of effective security measures. Wi-Fi hacking has become a very common and a serious problem, and it risks the security of businesses and organizations and users' private information. Security is critical for universities as it provides service to a large number of users and contains a great deal of confidential data. Not only are university systems vulnerable to data breaches, but so is the personal information of all stakeholders within the university. Hackers have become increasingly sophisticated, making it even more harder for organizations to protect themselves against malicious activities. Moving on to the problem statement. The current authentication method to connect to the university Wi-Fi is not secure enough. It relies on a single-factor authentication, which is a username and a password. This can be easily be compromised if the user's credentials are stolen. This research seeks to investigate the effectiveness of utilizing multiple factor authentication scheme for protecting the university's Wi-Fi network. So why are universities targeted? Universities are targeted due to their personal data, open access, remote operations, and outdated systems. So understanding multiple factor authentication. So I have two definitions here. Multiple factor authentication is a security process that requires a user to provide two or more authentication factors to access a system, network, or an application. This adds an additional layer of security to the traditional user and password combination. The second definition, multiple factor authentication has been well defined in literature as the combination of two or more independent credentials to identify a user's identity. Why is MFA important? It improves security. MFA makes it much harder for attackers to gain unauthorized access. It reduces risk of phishing. MFA makes it more difficult for attackers to use phishing attacks to steal credentials. And lastly, it increases user trust. MFA can provide users with the additional layer of assurance that their accounts are secured. We have three types of authentication factors, which is your knowledge factor, which is something the user knows, which can be your password, your password, your pins, and security question. And the second one, position factor, something the user has, the mobile OTP, security tokens, smart card, and lastly, inheritance, something the user is. Your face to authenticate. You can use your fingerprint or voice recognition. The research methodology. A research approach refers to the method or strategy researchers follow to conduct a study or investigate a research problem or question. This includes various activities, steps, and techniques to collect and analyze data, interpret findings, and draw conclusions. This study employs a mixed method approach to assess the stability and effectiveness of multiple factor authentication scheme for securing the university's Wi-Fi network. The research will be conducted in 4 phases: your literature review, design and development of the MFA scheme, implementation and testing, and lastly, evaluation. With the literature review, the study will begin with a comprehensive literature review to establish the theoretical foundation and contextual background for MFA in educational institutions. The review will cover existing research on authentication methods, focusing on the strength and weakness of single factor and multiple factor authentication system. Particularly, attention will be given to studies that explore the implementation of MFA in a similar environment, analyzing the findings and identifying best practices. A design and development of MFA. Based on insight from the literature review, an MFA scheme was designed to specifically meet the security requirements of the university's network. The chosen combinations of authentication are knowledge-based and position-based, was selected to balance security, strength, user convenience, and cost effectiveness. Implementing and testing. The proposed MFA scheme will be implemented or simulated in a controlled environment within the university. This phase involves configuring the network to support the chosen MFA and integrating them with existing authentication systems. Once implemented, the MFA will be tested under various conditions to assess its effectiveness in preventing unauthorized access and impact on user experience. Testing will include simulated cyber attacks such as phishing attempts to evaluate the scheme's reliance against the real world threats. Lastly, the evaluation. The evaluation will involve evaluating the MFA performance based on several criteria, effectiveness, user satisfaction, and operational feasibility. That will be collected through user surveys, as a user survey, system performance metrics, and security incident reports to gauge the system's impact. Moving on to data collection. Like mentioned before, data will be collected through a combination of qualitative and quantitative methods. Interviews will be conducted with the university IT administrators, network security experts, potential end users to gather qualitative insights on the current security practices, vulnerabilities, and user requirements. In conclusion, this paper has explored the feasibility and effectiveness of implementing multi-factor authentication schemes to enhance the security of the university's Wi-Fi network. Through a review of existing literature, the research intends to identify the significant advantage of MFA over the traditional single-factor authentication method, particularly in reducing the risk of unauthorized access and enhancing the overall network security. So on this slide, it's the proposed MFA combination. So basically, the user will attempt to connect. Normally, when a user connects to the Wi-Fi, they'll enter the username and password. After that, it will obviously validate if both the username and password is correct, they will receive an OTP via the email or SMS. Once they receive that, then they will be required to enter that OTP. And once they enter it and it's correct, it will also validate whether it's correct. If not, it will tell them, give them the feedback that the OTP is incorrect, and then they'll enter the right one. And once it's validated, access will be granted to the network. And thank you. Hey, I even forgot to switch on my camera.
Thank you, Kushula.
Thank you.
Hi, Arti, can I go ahead?
Yeah, actually, I was asking for questions. If you have any questions, we are open to it.
Just a short one, Kushula.
Yes.
How far along are you in your research process? Because I'm
Okay,
trying to figure out, are you in which stage?
Okay, and with my research, I've currently applied for the ethical clearance. So in order to collect data and find out to collect data and do the interviews for data collection, and to if needed the proposed MFA, if it needs changing and everything. So I'm in that stage.
Okay, thank you. Your study has got potential. I think it's a very good study. All right, thank you, Chair.
Yes, and one more thing, I forgot one thing. My supervisors that are helping me with the studies, Prof. Mpeko and Mr. Libya. Thank you.
Am I audible?
Yes.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah. I have one question. Have you given a thought for AI-driven adaptive authentication? So my question is, can AI-driven adaptive authentication enhance Wi-Fi security?
Am I audible? Yes, I've thought of it. I'll make research on it, because I'm currently a grad working with APSA. It's something they're also trying to bring in. So it's an emerging technology that it's being integrated in quite a lot of systems. So it's something I'll also look into for future studies on the paper.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you so much for your presentation. Moving on to our next presentation.
Yes.
We have investigating fake news detection using BERT Robert LLMs. Dear presenter, could you please start with your presentation? Yes, we can see your screen.
Yes, hello everyone. Can you see me?
Yes, we can hear you and your presentation is visible to us. You may please start with your presentation.
Okay, so hello everybody. Today I'm going to be presenting our research project investigating fake news detection using BERT and Roberta LLMs, which is large language models. I am Amr Abul Haj, and first of all, I'd like to thank my team, Omar Safwat, Yusuf Ghanem, Professor Amran, and Mr. Ali. And I'd also like to thank my university, American University of Sharjah, for their grant. So let's see what is for the agenda today. So first I will introduce what is fake news, what is the definition of fake news, the widespread of fake news, and the challenges and limitations that faces the machine learning field when trying to detect fake news. Next, I will tackle the literature, what was implemented in literature. Then I will go through the methodology from the data set we selected to the data pre-processing techniques we picked and the novel architecture that we implemented. Then we're going to go through the result and we're going to conclude. First of all, what is fake news? So fake news, I would define it as false information presented as a true fact. And it's also a form of propaganda that spreads on social media, online resources, and print media. They're often designed to mislead or manipulate public opinion. Now, when we're trying to understand the current situation that we're in, we are currently in a digital platform era. News and information spread very fast. In fact, one research said that fake news spread 3 times faster than regular information. And one very important use case for the spread of fake news in the political discourse would be the 2016 US election, in which 1 in 4 Americans encountered fake news. Now, fake news is made to make someone believe that it's genuine information, and therefore they're more likely to share it and spread it. And therefore, the problem here is that it can influence public opinion and threaten democracy. So what challenges and limitations do we encounter? Why is it hard to detect that something is fake news? First of all, the volume in which information gets delivered or consumed by the average person in today's world is huge. It's very hard for someone to manually filter and sift through information and label it as fake news or not. Secondly, misinformation is inherently challenging to detect. They're often intertwined they intertwine real information with false information because they're designed to be credible and persuasive and allow people to share it and therefore spread rapidly through social media and other digital platforms. Thirdly, it's difficult to assess a political statement. So fact-checking requires a bias-free resource. If you were someone to try and evaluate or give a justification to why you think something is fake news, it's very hard to be bias-free. I'm not even mentioning that bias here is an ill-intended bias. I'm saying that bias is something in nature. A lot of people might fall victim to confirmation bias when trying to sift through certain information. Also, political statements can often use very vague language or sarcastic tones that might be hard to detect. So what did the literature try to do to combat this? So this field as a whole started gaining traction in the field of machine learning as back as 2016, back in the time of the elections. And people continue to try different approaches and it resurged more in the COVID era, in which they also tried to combat a lot of the fake news that happens. You can see Meta, Twitter, and other social media companies try to have some sort of systems that combat this. As you can see, there are several benchmark datasets that the literature holds as benchmarks when trying different architectures. One of them is the LIAR dataset, which is the dataset we'll be using in this approach. So the approaches in this field underwent a lot of different stages. So the first stage, they used early machine learning methods, rudimentary basically. So support vector machines, SVMs, traditional machine learning models like decision trees or naive Bayes. But then these models don't gather context. They are not able to understand what is the context and other very important metadata surrounding this statement. Then with the rise of transformers, you can see that many approaches using document embeddings with semantic vectors and context awareness, or capsule networks with hierarchical features and entity relationships were implemented to try to understand tones in speech, context in speech, and different metadata related to the statement. One type of these transformers is the BERT transformer, or the BERT family. There's the very different, there's many versions of BERT. So BERT, which is the bidirectional encoder representation from transformer, an encoder-only transformer that gained traction for its wide ability in natural language processing, and other models like Roberta, which the literature deems to be a better optimized BERT, in which we'll try to comment on that later in the results. And then finally, large language models, which a lot of people are familiar with by today, which is GPT 3.5, GPT 4, or Llama, which is by Facebook. We will be tackling them soon. So for the methodology, the dataset we selected is the Lyre dataset. The Lyre dataset consists of around 12.8K records in the following distribution shown. It's extracted from the website politifact.com, and politifact.com extracts a lot of different statements and labels them on a 6-level truthfulness score. Those labels are true, mostly true, half true, barely true, false, and pants fire. Now, this dataset's aim was to gather a good amount of statements that have nuanced differences in how the level of misinformation in them. So the dataset is structured as follows. So you'll have the ID of the statement and a label, and then you'll have the statement, and then columns 4 to 8 and 14 are called the metadata. So subject of the statement, speaker's job title, state info, party affiliation, and the venue or location statement. For columns 9 to 13 is the credit score history, the number of other statements for that speaker that are labeled any of these truthfulness scores except true, which you can calculate on your own. You can count it. So next, what data preprocessing steps did we undergo? First of all, binary encoding of labels. This is a standard data preprocessing technique when you're using transformers, encoding the labels in such a way that they are fed as zeros and ones, then handling missing values. Missing values in the data set when it comes to the credit score were changed to 0, and missing textual information was changed to none. Tokenization of input, we used here the BERT tokenizer, which helps break down sentences on 3 steps in order to form tokenized inputs, which are usually numbers, which is what transformers deal with. And next would be the binarization of input. We made it such that true, mostly true, and half true labels are as true, and barely true, false, and pants fire as false. And this will later help us compare to different approaches, because most of our approaches try to do some sort of binarization on the dataset, and this is the way we have done it. One contribution or something that hasn't been done in the literature was our credit score calculation. We tried to make this value to be a separate input in architecture, which we will show you in the next slide, and it uses hyperbolic tan, and it loops over the weights that we tuned and multiplies it to the credibility. For example, the number CI would be, for example, the number of half true, for example, etc., over the total number of statements for that author, and this credit score will be very important in the architecture. So here is the architecture. Now, in the literature, a lot of them try to couple different blocks, I would say, like the bidirectional long short-term memory, which is the BiLSTM, or the fully connected layer, or convolution neural network CNNs, or a mix of them, in order to test them with BERT and Roberta. However, a lot of their approaches was not comprehensive, and what we tried to do in here is we try to test a wide variety of architectures. So we created this fusion block idea, as you can see in the middle. And this fusion block can either have a fully connected layer only, convolutional neural networks, CNNs, and a fully connected layer, or can have a bidirectional long short-term memory via STM with a fully connected, or have all three together. And as you can see here on the input, you can see the statement input passes into either a BERT or a Roberta. We tested with both. And the metadata will pass also separately. And then after the fusion block, as you can see here, the outputs are flattened. And you can see that we are concatenating the credit score input, which is the value I was mentioning in the previous slide. Then it passes through fully connected layers, concatenated. And as you can see in the fully connected layer, you can see that we tried both the ReLU activation function and the GILU activation function, which we'll get into. As most of the literature tried to focus on ReLU, we tried to perhaps test different activation functions, and we found that GILU is excellent. I will show you in the results. So moving on to the results, we'll be listing the results, whether it's BERT or Roberta, that were significant or that were above the state of the art. So as you can see here, there are 6 architectures that we found interesting to showcase for BERT. Now we realized that the results are generally much higher than literature, which I'll be showing in the future slides. You can see that the BILSTM CNN, for example, had a very high test accuracy of 0.757 and a test F1 score of 0.755. And you can see other architectures that we tried with GILU and ReLU, architectures that don't have configurations that are not shown are usually underperforming architectures. Moving on to Roberta, you can clearly notice that you have much less architectures. And this is one of the contributions of this paper. A lot of the literature mentioned that Roberta is a much more capable BERT model from transformer from the BERT family. And most of the literature predicted that it would perform better generally. However, our results show that BERT did perform better over more architectures. Roberta suffered a lot from underfitting, and a lot of these results were not significant enough to be shown. And that's one thing to note. And you can notice that both our BERT and Roberta, the highest result was when the fusion block was a BILSTM CNN. And as you can see in the Roberta results, the test accuracy was 0.744 and an F1 score was 0.742. So if you compare the results with the literature, you can see that a lot of the results like GPT-4 optimized or a zero shot, different versions of BERT, and also normal BERT and Roberta scored much less than our own best performing BERT and best performing Roberta, which are the BERT BILSTM CNN. And as you can see, our score, F1 score rounded for BERT BILSTM CNN is 0.76, and the Roberta is 0.74, showcasing that our method, along with different techniques that we used from hyperparameter optimization, done the credit score calculation, the architectures tested, did perhaps yield a state-of-the-art result, which we are very proud of. Now, in conclusion, what are the key findings and contributions that this research has? So first of all, we tested BERT and Roberta, and we've achieved a state-of-the-art performance in fake news detection. This was achieved through a novel method of calculating credit score, architecture, trying a variety of architectures, hyperparameter optimization, tuning, and scheduling using a learning scheduler in order to closely monitor the learning. We have managed to achieve state-of-the-art performance. Next is the GILU activation function demonstrated overall superior performance rather than what the literature usually depends on, which is the ReLU activation function. Other activation functions did not yield as good of results, and BERT unexpectedly outperformed Roberta, which was very interesting, and therefore future directions of the research in fake news detection would be to explore reasons for BERT's superiority in political fake news detection. And secondly, continue developing robust safeguards against misinformation to protect public discourse. And I would add also to continuously aim towards building a more bias-free data set. I know it's a very hard task, but we can try to hope as much as possible, because the results are as good as the data that you're able to feed it. And that's it from my side. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much for your presentation. Ma'am, any questions?
Yeah. Okay, you have presented very well. I have one question. Am I audible?
Yes.
Okay, given the risk of adversarial attacks in NLP, how resilient is your model to manipulation attempts where malicious actors slightly modify fake news content?
Can you give me an example of your question to make sure I'm understanding?
Yeah, if the news contents were modified, slightly modified, this could be you can say a attack, malicious attack. Is it right?
Yeah, I agree with you. This is a concern that
So
that's
is your model then resilient to this type of attack?
resilient. Studying Bert and Roberta specifically, I'm not completely sure about that, but one very key important will be that whenever you're implementing a system on a large scale that has a lot of data involved, you would try to build a pipeline in which you're securing the pipeline. So usually these systems, let's say an entity tries to implement such system. The model will be hosted on a cloud. The data stored will be stored on the cloud. So the security will be coming from your cloud service provider. So you're kind of, let's say, outsourcing the concern of security to someone who is more credible. So that's what happens usually when you're implementing something at this large scale of information that's continuously coming.
Thank you.
Did this answer the question?
Yes. Thank you.
No worries.
Thank you, ma'am, for your question. Thank you so much for your presentation. So you have any questions?
No question from my side. Thank you for the lovely presentation.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. Okay. Moving on to our next presentation, we have the paper title, Machine Learning Algorithms for Solar Irradiance Forecasting in a Rural Community in Michoacán, Mexico. Dear presenter, could you please start with your paper?
Hi everyone, I'm trying to share, but okay.
Yes, could you please try right now? If you could share the presentation.
This one, sure. Now.
Yeah.
Perfect. Well, thank you very much. I will, in this work, I will share a little bit about a project that we are developing in a rural community in Michoacán, Mexico. And this part of the work deals with some algorithms that we use for solar irradiance forecasting for the reasons that I will give you in a couple of slides. Why solar forecasting? We are interested in solar forecasting because accurate forecasting allows us to manage in a better way the energy. And since we are interested in solar-based technologies, including thermal solar photovoltaics, and biomass, which is indirectly related to the sun, it also might benefit for rural electrifications. In some cases in Mexico, at least there are about 1.5 million of persons which does not have access to electricity. And one of the most important is because solarimetric stations are very expensive. So there are few of them within the country. So this means a lot of dispersion, and data is not quite accessible to all of them. And in this way, machine learning provides some issues that allow us to deal with some limitations of traditional methodologies and also improve some systems. In particular, the main challenge in rural communities is, as I mentioned, the lack of extensive meteorological data, not only solarimetric data, but also meteorological like precipitation, temperature, pressure, and so on. The second point is because sun or irradiance, to be more correct, has a high variability due to the cloudy conditions. As you can see in this image in the right, these fluctuations due, as I mentioned, due to the clouds. So we need to look for cost-effective solutions. The main objective in this work was to develop some models to improve solar forecasting, which allow us to downscale. This means that we could have some data like at the global scale for global circulation models for numerical weather prediction, and down this data to the locations that we are interested in. Also, we want to compare the performance of the techniques, and the most important for us was to support the rural energy planning for the community. The area of interest calls San Francisco Pichataro, which has about 5,700 inhabitants. It's about 2,400 meters above sea level in between the forest. You can see here in the image. So it is a cold and temperate weather, as you can see in this figure. This population, about a fourth of them speak some indigenous dialect, which is called Purepecha. So what we found is that after looking for their needs of the community, is that they use mostly wood or biomass for the cooking purposes. It's part of the tradition. And the second issue is that there are some places, this one is a kindergarten, these are 2 classrooms, that does not have any access to electricity, so they have to give classes during day. They don't have lights, they don't have any other source of like heating system or so on. And ultimately, since we are working in the material science department, we are developing some photo-based technologies as photocatalysis, photocatalyst for water remediation, as well as some biomaterials. In this case, we use data obtained from a solar station that is comprising from a pyranometer from Gibsonen and a temperature and humidity sensors. This data is retrieved every minute, 10 minutes, and 1 hour, and from a global database that is called Solcast. Here is the image. We retrieve data every 10 minutes. So we also look for some local weather stations, but unfortunately, the quality of the data was very bad. From these datasets, we have different variables. Some of them has been removed because this data has some issues like multicollinearity, some as GTI, DNI, that is direct normal irradiance or global total irradiance, are highly correlated. So we have to avoid this type of problems. And at the end, we select only 6 variables: global horizontal irradiance, that is the solar irradiance provided from the model, the clear sky direct horizontal irradiance, air temperature from the Solcast database. Although we used like 20 variables, we end up only using these three. And from the solarimetric station, we have the relative humidity and temperature that are used as predictors, and the solar irradiance that was split into a training dataset and an evaluation. And from this dataset, we train two models, the linear regression, which is a simple model, but they have some drawbacks, and decision trees, which can deal with non-linearities inherent to this type of atmospheric phenomena. They are easy to interpret, and also this model is less sensitive to outliers and multicollinearity. Just to compare, at the left, you have the measured data from the solar irradiance through almost a year, and at the right, the numerical retrieved model. And also they have some similarities. There are also some evidence difference, like these small dots that corresponds to a decrease in the radiation that is not correctly modeled by this data set. And it's why we want to improve somehow the model from these numerical weather prediction models. As I mentioned, we test like 20 different variables, but we end up selecting just 5: air temperature, global, the irradiance, the clear sky irradiance, that I will explain in a moment, measure temperature, the relative humidity, and the measure irradiance. And here you can observe that in particular pressure, we left this variable just to show that there are some of them that is not closely related, that we just dismissed from the model. And at the end, as I mentioned, only 5 variables were used. About the results, we observed that for the linear regression, we obtained a root mean square error of about 90 watt per square meter, a correlation coefficient of 0.925, and a mean absolute error of 43 watt per square meter. What it is also important to note is that for higher irradiance, the model estimate the value of the real measured data, and this can be explained if we consider that the solar irradiance varies through the year. For example, here in the top is the irradiance that we receive in July, which almost falls about 40% in December. And since in the model we are normalizing with the maximum value, this kind of problems is not correctly captured. I mean, the normalization, it's okay for the numerical model, but we can normalize with another variable that we just notice after analyzing all this data, that is the clearness index, which is a kind of efficiency that relates the measured data that can be observed like this image here for a cloudy day, and the theoretical maximum irradiance that can be observed by this line that is like has a parabolic shape. And it is important to mention that this shape can be can be modeled numerically with high precision. I mean, about 0.5 percentage error regarding the real value. So these kind of things are now investigated to improve this data. For the decision tree, this is the final decision tree. The metrics are more or less similar to the previous model, but here, as I mentioned, we can obtain an easier interpretation in terms of these values, for example, that are almost the half of the total data, 36,000, and these are about 19, which corresponds to the night. And in the opposite side, we have a clear or sunny day condition. So to the right, we obtain day condition, and to the left, more night condition, like sunset and sunrise in this position. But also these values also depends from the day conditions in terms of if it is cloudy, it will be very close to 0.1, 0.2, sorry. If it is cloudy, like this image will be fluctuating, and a clear day will be something like that, but a little bit below the theoretical value. In conclusion, we compare our results with some state-of-the-art models based on machine learning techniques, and we are about 4 to 5 times higher. But it is important to mention that these models use a higher number of variables. But if we compare with other models that numerical weather prediction, we can observe that the error almost reduces by a half. That is the main aim of this work. So at the end, the metrics that we are obtaining are within a plausible, and we want this kind of expect this kind of results. If we compare with several methodologies, we can improve it. As I mentioned, we can include some solar geometry variables to improve measurements. And one of the collateral, let's say, goals is that this development enables investigating some other application related to the Sustainable Development Goals of the United Nations, sorry, that are dealing with water quality that I will mention briefly. One of them is to synthesize biomaterials that are now being used for water removal of some
Presenter,
pollutants.
could you
Yes,
please conclude your research?
yes. Then we have proved that the water quality improves, and also we are synthesizing some materials that function with water to remove and mineralize some emerging pollutants. Thanks for your attention, and I will answer any question that might arise.
Thank you. Thank you so much for your presentation. We are open for questions.
Yeah. Did you use data cleansing?
Yes, yes,
Yeah.
yes,
So,
sorry.
how did you handle missing or inconsistent data during the data cleansing process? And what criteria were used to ensure data quality?
In this case, we are trying some imputation methodologies. But for this particular case, what we do is we remove all data that is incomplete. I mean, we only take only those days that are complete in terms of that we have all values for these days. It was compared with the maximum value that can be theoretically reached. We remove some nuns and so on. So in this way, we make the quality control that you mentioned. And for the Solcas, we do the same, but they have their own methodology, so the data is already clean.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you so much for your presentation too. So you have any questions?
No, thank you.
Okay. Moving on to our next presentation, we have the paper title, Office Layouts Impact on Employee Productivity and Efficiency. Dear presenter, could you please start with your presentation?
Okay, hello everyone. Thank you for being here today. My name is Safina Al-Zahira from Binus University, Indonesia, and I'm honored to be here today at ICICT 2025 to present a topic that is becoming increasingly relevant in today's evolving work environment, office layouts impact on employee productivity and efficiency. Our research focuses on how office design influences the productivity of employees, particularly looking at Generation Z, who will soon make up the majority of the workforce. As we step into the future workforce, technology continues to reshape the way we operate. Companies are starting to seek employees who are not only skilled but also adaptable to technological developments. According to the Future of Job Report 2023, 82% of companies plan to implement training programs that enhance employees' technology skills. This transition towards a more technological-driven workplace is significant for the younger workforce, Generation Z, who has excellent technology adaptability compared to previous generations. Indonesia is currently experiencing a demographic bonus, which means it has a large working age population that is expected to last until 2050. From BPS 2023 report, in 2022, there are already 190 million working age population, and Gen Z covers 35% of the population. And it is estimated that by 2025, globally around 27% of Generation Z will be working and will dominate the workforce. One key aspect that significantly affects productivity and efficiency is the office layout design. But how does this impact their productivity, and what office layout best support the efficiency of Gen Z workers? To explore these questions, our research focuses on Gen Z workers, examining how the office layout design influence their productivity and efficiency. Through this study, we aim to gain deeper insights into how organizations can create workspace that Gen Z needs while boosting business success. In addition to understanding the needs of technological change, companies need to understand the working characteristics of Gen Z so that companies can meet expectations and adjust office layout to their needs. Generation Z has several different characteristics from previous generation in working. Generation Z born into technology. In practice, Gen Z values freedom in choosing when, where, and how they work. Moreover, Gen Z who are more tech-savvy rely on computers and phones as their main communication tools and need facilities such as Wi-Fi, electrical outlets, and additional monitors to support them in working. In the workplace, Gen Z values effective communication between generations. They are individualistic, but they also value diversity and social interaction. Office layout is not just about design, but also has an impact on how workers work. A good layout can increase productivity, reduce distraction, increase focus, and support collaboration by influencing comfort, functionality, and collaboration. Productivity, defined as the ratio of output to input, represents employees' efficiency to accomplish tasks within a given period and is influenced by factors such as communication, satisfaction, expectation, workspace, and worker characteristics. Efficiency refers to research such as time, tools, cost, and labor are utilized to produce an output. The method we use is a qualitative method involving surveys and interviews. We are targeting Gen Z workers in the IT division at a retail company located in Tangerang, Indonesia. The tools we use for the survey are Google Forms, and for design layout, we used the Kuhum application. As seen in the following pictures, the old office layout and new office layout is different. The old office layout has a semi-open space concept, which means that employees can still interact even though it is limited due to the limited partitions. Meanwhile, the new office layout is designed to be more flexible, where desks and chairs are not limited to provide flexibility in interacting. Here, we designed 6 features in the new office layout. First, the relax corner. This area contains beanbags and a small table to provide space for workers who want to work while relaxing or just resting. The second is minibar. This area is composed of 8 high chairs and a high table that provides coffee machines and snacks. This cafe-like atmosphere makes workers freely work while drinking coffee and eating snacks. The third is open space. This area is common office design. It's designed where workers can easily communicate and collaborate with others, adapting to the characteristic of Gen Z who love socializing and flexibility. The fourth is desk-facing window. This area is composed of tables and chairs facing the window. In this area, workers can make private space while working. The fifth is sofa area. This design is for a cozy atmosphere. This area can support collaborative work. Each sofa accommodates up to 6 people equipped with a table. The soft sofa makes workers not tired easily of sitting for a long time. The sixth area is work from office, feels like work from cafe. This area has a similar concept to a cafe. It has 4 circular chairs and 1 table. Same as minibar where workers can freely work while drinking coffee and eating snacks, the difference is in the design. This area design gives a cozy impression that can boost work. Based on the survey we conducted, participants had various views on the difference between the old layout design and the new layout design. Next, I will discuss the results of a survey that show how Gen Z respond to change in office layouts. In the IT divisions, which consists of 38 employees from Generation X to Generation Z, around 10 people come from Generation Z. In this study, we surveyed 8 Gen Z employees to find out their preference for changing office layouts. Among the 8 participants, 5 were born between 2002 and 2007, while they were born between 1997 and 2001. The majority of participants preferred the new layout due to its flexibility, particularly the relaxed corner, which offered the comfortable space to unwind without affecting focus. 7 participants appreciate the dynamic layout, citing increased excitement, support for both individual and collaborative work, and varied seating options like desk, facing window, and cafe-style areas. 5 participants found the layout more comfortable, while 1 preferring privacy, disliked the open design. 7 participants felt it boosted productivity by reducing boredom and promoting interaction. However, participant 5 believed productivity relied more on colleagues than the layout. For efficiency, 7 participants agreed that new layout improved their teamwork and communication, making collaborative work easier without needing formal meeting rooms. Participant 6, however, felt efficiency depend on teamwork rather than the layout itself, emphasizing the role of a positive work environment in enhancing efficiency. So the conclusion, Gen Z workers in the IT division covered about a quarter of a total workforce and expected to grow and dominate the office in 5 to 10 years. This shift necessitates an office layout that adjusts with Gen Z preference, flexibility, collaborations, and non-monotony. Based on the survey, we recommend future office designs focusing on flexibility and comfort like relaxed corner, desk facing window, and cafe-like area design. So previously we got some questions from the viewer, and this is the explanation. The first question, how might the findings differ if the study included a larger, more varied sample of Gen Z workers from different geographical locations? If the study included a larger and more geographical diverse sample of Gen Z workers, the findings might provide a broader perspective on office layout preference and their impact on productivity and efficiency. Different regions may also have different work cultures, technological adaptation levels, and workplace expectations, which could influence their preference for office layout. Future research should capture more diverse sample to provide a more comprehensive understanding of how office layouts affects Gen Z workers globally. Second, could the study explore the long-term effects of these office layouts on employee well-being and retention? Yes, this study could certainly explore the long-term effects on employee well-being and retention. Since our study focuses on productivity and efficiency, future study could incorporate longitudinal data to track employee satisfaction and turnover rates with factors like stress levels, job satisfaction, and workplace engagement. It could provide deeper insights into how different layouts impact employee retention in the long term. The third question is, how were the 6 office layout designs selected for the study? Were they based on previous research or industry standards? So we selected the 6 office layouts through observation in the field and discussion with respondents. And then we customized some aspects to adjust Gen Z work characteristics. For example, the corner area is inspired by students on my campus who love to study or do the task while relaxing at the same time. Meanwhile, the minibar area is based on observation in the office. The sofa and work from office like work from cafe are inspired by Generation Z workers who like working in the cafe and restaurant. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you. Thank you for your presentation. Ma'am, any questions?
Yes. Thank you for colorful presentation. I have actually two questions. First one is, with only 8 participants, how do you ensure that your findings are representative and generalizable to a broader Gen Z workforce? Hello?
Yes.
Shall I repeat?
Sorry, can you repeat the questions?
Yeah. With only 8 participants, how do you ensure that your findings are representative and generalizable to a broader Gen Z workforce?
It's probably since Gen Z likes social interaction and flexibility, so these characteristics tend to make them like layout more flexible, easy interaction. So these characteristics probably can represent the majority of Gen Z.
Okay. The second question is, given that some employees emphasized teamwork over office layout, how do you balance the influence of physical workspace with social and organizational factors?
Sorry, can you repeat the question?
You want me to repeat?
Yes.
Given that some employees emphasize teamwork over office layout, how do you balance the influence of physical workspace with social and organizational factors?
Because productivity measured by the number of tasks employees complete in different environments. So we ask about how office layout supports them while reaching the task. Efficiency assessed by how smooth the workflows function, whether employees can access necessary research easily, collaborate easily, or minimize distraction that slow them down.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you for your presentation as well. So you have any questions?
Is it possible
No.
for guests to ask?
We can proceed now.
Okay. So moving on to our next presentation. Performance analysis of floodlight, ONOS, open daylight and view controllers in software-defined network. Dear presenter, could you please start with your presentation?
Okay. Good evening, everyone. My name is Yao Rolf Abraham. I'm a PhD student at JFK University in Ouagadougou. My research focuses on the security of SDN. But first, I want you to determine the performance of SDN controllers through this article in order to use the controller best suited for my work. This leads me to work on performance analysis on floodlights, ONOS open daylight and Rio controllers in software-defined network. The table contents is as follows. You have introduction, problem statements, methodology experimentations, results, and conclusion. By way of introduction, we can note that SDN, software-defined network, is a technology that aims to centralize controls, improve programmability and orchestration of network resources and virtualize these resources by separating them from physical elements on the network. The SDN architecture is made up of application layer, which is made up for all the application deployed. The second, the controller layer, which is made up of one or more controller, and the data layers, which is made up of routers and switches. Several researchers have studied the SDN controller layer in terms of security, scalability, availability, and performance. Indeed, the SDN controller layers made up of controllers played an important role in the supervision, control, and programming. A cyber attack or a controller overload can lead the entire network malfunctioning. So, for efficient traffic management in the SDN, a high performance control is essential. We have selected Floodlight, ONOS ODL, and Rio controller to determine their performance. To determine the performance, we created a test environment using virtualization technology. Four virtual machines were created with VMware Workstation 17 Pro and Ubuntu 18.04.6 was configured and virtualization machines. Floodlight, ONOS, ODLL, and Rio controller are installed on each machine. We use these controllers because they centralize and distribute architectures. The figure shows the topology of our customers' network. The figure shows the topology of our customers' network. It comprises 9 switches and 12 hosts. It was created using Mininet enable SDN devices to be tested, as well as those using OpenFlow protocols. The ping and EPF tools are also used to test connectivity between different machines. The result of the experimental shows that in terms of battery utilization, ONOS is better performance but the other controllers because the architecture is distributed. In terms of jitters, ONOS are the lowest jitters over all time interval comparative to other controllers. This is due to its architectures, which ensure efficiencies, flow management to minimize latencies variations. In terms of packet delivered rate, the ODL controller outperforms other controllers. In terms of round trip time, also Floodlight controllers has the best performance. This is due to the small size of the network, but can increase under EV loads. In terms of throughput, ONOS controllers has the best throughput in most all time intervals. So, in conclusion, from this analysis, we can affirm that ONOS controllers is better compared to the other controllers. With performance can be explained, but its distributed architecture, its resilience, and its ability to manage large networks with high ability requirements. It is therefore important to choose an SDN controllers based on a specific requirements of the network, taking into account for the performance requirements. Thank you for your attention. Sorry for my language levels.
Thank you so much for your presentation. Ma'am, any questions?
Okay, did your study consider security aspects of the controllers?
Hello.
Hello, am I audible?
Yes, can you repeat your question?
Yeah. Did your study consider security aspects of the controllers?
Yes, I work for the future research. I want to work in controller in specific controller area security. So I work on machine learning and deep learning experimentation models like RNN, XGBoost, and logic regression for the test.
Okay, thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you for your presentation as well. So you have any questions?
Thank you.
No, Chairperson.
Okay, thank you so much for your presentation. So this brings us to the end of our presentations. So I would like to request our respected session chairs to share their insights and feedback to all our participants who have presented their paper in this session. I request our respected session chairs to provide their insights and feedback to all our participants who have presented their paper in this session.
Well, from my side, I just want to thank all the presenters. Thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen, for sharing your, let me switch on my video, for sharing your insightful research with us today. Thank you for your dedication to advancing knowledge in the field. Yeah, enjoy the research journey. I know it's got challenges, but I'm sure you can contribute meaningful solutions to the real world problems that we are all experiencing. So with that, just thank you so much.
Thank you so much for your valuable feedback, ma'am. Could you please share your insights and feedback too?
Yes, yes. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, as we conclude this insightful session, I would like to take a moment to reflect on the excellent presentations and discussions we have had today. So each research contribution has provided valuable perspectives in their respective domain. The methodologies, findings, and discussions today have sparked thoughtful, provoking insights that can inspire further research and practical applications. So I would like to extend my gratitude to all the presenters for their hard work and dedication. A special thanks to organizers for facilitating this platform. So I encourage all of you to continue these conversations beyond this session, collaborate and explore new opportunities to push the boundaries of knowledge in their field. So once again, thank you all for your contributions, and I look forward to seeing more advancements in your work in the future. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you so much for your valuable feedback. So I sincerely thank all our authors for their excellent presentations and contributions in this session, and all our participants for being a part of this international conference. I hope this session was informative enough. We, on the behalf of the whole team, thank you for the support during this 10th version and all the previous 9 versions of the conference. We would be happy to have you all in the 11th version as well in 2026. All the presenters would be getting their digital certificates within through email within 2 working days, and further, all the papers have already been forwarded to Springer. The publication will be live within 6 months. Kindly cooperate with the team of ICICT 2025. I also thank our session chairs for chairing the session. A token of appreciation to the chair on behalf of Team ICICT 2025 and Global Knowledge Research Foundation and partners. Thank you so much, our respected session chairs, for your valuable presence. Thank you so much. I would kindly request all the participants to please switch on your camera so that we can have a quick snapshot of the virtual conference. I would request everyone to please switch on your camera. Please. Thank you. Thank you so much, everyone, for your wonderful presentations and valuable presence. Stay safe and take care.